y'all. Ashley here with Progress Georgia. You're watching Georgia Smothered and Covered. I appreciate you being here today because we have a dope conversation lined up. We're about to talk about something that you've probably seen in the news. The Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. You may know it as Cop City. And so you've also probably been driving around and you've seen all these things, whether it's graffiti, whatever, where it says Stop Cop City. I will give credit to the folks that are a part of the Stop Cop City movement, that y'all have some very creative folks in how they've marketed Cop City. But it's a big issue in the city. And if you are an Atlanta resident, it's an issue that you need to care about. If you aren't an Atlanta resident, the issue on public safety is one that you need to be caring about, and wherever you live. And this is a big topic in Georgia as well. So we're going to dive into this conversation on the 85-acre development that is in the DeKalb County South River Forest. And we are joined with two activists today, Kiana Jones and Dr. Jackie, who's going to talk to us about exactly what this issue is. We're going to talk about it from the environmental justice and racial justice standpoint, the social impact that it has on communities, the militarization of police, all of these things we're going to dive into today. So let's get into the conversation. The first guest that I'm going to introduce is Dr. Jacqueline Eccles, Dr. Jackie. That's what we're going to call her today. Dr. Jackie is an environmental activist who spent over 2 decades advocating for environmental justice for communities in Upper South River watershed, the city of Atlanta, and DeKalb County. She's also served as the board president for South River Watershed Alliance since 2011. So welcome, Dr. Jackie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Our second guest is Kiana Jones. Kiana is a political and social justice activist and community organizer who is a staunch advocate for quality and affordable childcare and equity in education, two really big issues that are so pervasive in our state as well. She currently works with community movement builders who are at the forefront of the Stop Cop City movement and to educate, engage, and empower the Black community, and is also a resident of the city of Atlanta. Kiana, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So glad you're here. So there's a lot to cover, and so we have a short amount of time, so I really want to launch into some questions, but can either one of you all tell us how this started? I mean, this has been a development in the works for a few years now.
I guess when it actually, was announced to the public, like it was no big deal, like it was a done deal. And I remember someone contacting me about this comment session that was planned for the Atlanta City Council, where folks call in and leave their comments about a particular issue. And actually, for me, that's how I heard about it. And it was a big effort to get folks to call in and voice your opinion, about the facility and particularly about where it was situated, which is at the old Atlanta prison farm site in Southeast Atlanta. Nothing more dramatic than that. And it was presented as if, this wasn't a done deal. This is kind of the intro to this. But you soon found out that this was kind of perfunctory. They had decided this is how it was going to be. And this is just going through the motions in terms of public input, which unfortunately happens a lot in the city of Atlanta. But that was my first introduction to it.
Definitely the same for me at that time. And I am formerly a resident of Atlanta. I was living in the city of Atlanta in unincorporated DeKalb, right behind the prison farm until about a month and a half ago. I moved to Decatur, not far from where we are right now, because my son just could not take the constant gunfire from the existing firing range. But at the time that Cop City was introduced, I was also still living in Decatur, in unincorporated DeKalb. And the first thing I heard was that the city of Atlanta is trying to do something with the old prison farm right by McNair High School. And it's like, okay, what are they trying to do? Because they had a police training facility there years and years ago that's been since closed down. I have a cousin who trained there like in the 80s. And we knew that they had closed down the training facility many, many years ago. And unbeknownst to me, the firing range was still there. But at the time that Cop City was first introduced, it was literally an announcement that someone saw on an agenda for the city of Atlanta, talking about a piece of land that is, while it lies within the city of Atlanta, technically it is in unincorporated DeKalb County. So that jurisdiction should have fallen to DeKalb County, but there was no word of it at the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners. So people were just like, what is happening? What are they trying to do? We know that this is Atlanta and DeKalb. We just need to come out and make our voices heard. The council person who introduced this piece of legislation at the time did not even live anywhere near that old prison farm. Her district was not the district that borders that piece of unincorporated DeKalb. Joyce Shepard was the councilwoman who introduced that legislation. She was the councilwoman for District 12. That piece of land, if it were in the Atlanta city limits, within those limits, it would lie within District 5. So we were all just kind of confused and like, people are going to have to say something. But in my mind, I really didn't think it was going to happen because I was just like, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's described that large piece of land, just so you all who are listening and watching this know that it's an 85-acre plot of land that the city of Atlanta has secured. And for this particular development, Cop City, it will be a police and fire training facility that's located in DeKalb County's South River Forest. And it's been historically the Atlanta prison farm site. And formerly a police shooting range. I think that's kind of still what's happening there now. The shooting range
is still there.
Yeah, that's happening there now. Included in that plan, though, and so it's about as big as 64 football fields, which is massive. If that can help you kind of put it in perspective, is a burn tower for fire, a shooting range, a mock village, so a mock city with schools, residential homes, and I believe even like a nightclub or a bar or something.
Yes.
Yeah. So and this started back during Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now kind of how did we go from that place of seeing it or hearing about it as an agenda item on city council to this now being this big campaign that it is now? Like, how has it evolved? And I mean, it's a short amount of time. I mean, we're talking 2021 essentially, and now in 2023. How is it? Why has it evolved into what it is today?
I think the first reason why it has evolved into what it is today is that people who had a belief in the democratic system that we live within have been let down by that very system. When people showed up at that initial council meeting, there was 17 hours of public comment via Zoom because we were in the midst of the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Yep.
So people came out. And if people are talking to you for 17 hours and they're saying, Ashley, I just don't want to live here. Ashley, this place is horrible. Ashley, I can't take it here. You would say, you know what? We have to get these people somewhere else to live. We have to do something about this. But people came out, and for 17 hours, people talked about the environmental impact. Yeah. They talked about the economic impact. They talked about the social justice impact, because that area, I was born and raised there. That high school that sits behind that piece of land is where most of my relatives have gone and matriculated high school. My granny is 90 years old and still lives in the house that I was born in, right in East Atlanta.
Yeah.
So people talked about the fact that for all of these years, the city of Atlanta has never cared about Southeast Atlanta that is in unincorporated DeKalb. And for that matter, DeKalb County has neglected us too. We have been the victims of environmental racism for so long. It's like, okay, I remember the landfills when I was a little girl, driving up and down Moreland Avenue and Key Road, and you could just smell the stink of the landfill for miles. And coming back to the same place, and now you mean to tell me that there's a firing range that's still open where these bullets are going off and our children are at school and they're hearing this, and then you want to take it? And that piece of land, the South River Forest, is actually 381 acres of forest land. You want to take this land, destroy our trees, and leave us without even green space to congregate and be in community together. For 17 hours, people talked about all of these things and how the community would be affected. And remember, this was 2021. We are coming off of the heels of the murders of Ahmaud Arbery down in Brunswick and Rayshard Brooks right on the west side of the city of Atlanta. Nationally, we're looking at the murder of George Floyd that everyone watched on television. We saw Breonna Taylor in her own home sleeping be murdered by police in riot gear. So when you talk about this type of training facility and what that means to the blackest part of Southeast Atlanta, to the blackest part of unincorporated DeKalb County, when you talk about bringing police here and the way that you want to do it, people stood up and said, no, that's not what we want, because we remember that this land was actually deeded to the people of DeKalb County in perpetuity for green space. What happened to that plan? What happened to the city of Atlanta's beloved community model that also included this land? Where did you go wrong and where did you forget about the people? So because for 17 hours, the public came out and they were ignored then, and fast forward from then to now, the public has continued to show up at council meetings, to show up in different places where we have seen city council members and voice our opinions. We have shown up time and again to participate in the democratic process, and we have been ignored. And that's why we are where we are today.
Is this council meeting you're referring to the one that was in September, right?
Of 2021. That was the initial council meeting where they first introduced this to the public. One thing that a lot of people are just now coming around to realize is that whether it's the Atlanta City Council, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners, public meetings are not held at times that are convenient for the public. Their agendas are not accessible. They are not made to really foster public participation. So in the meeting where this was first introduced and the whole process that got it introduced, because these things have to be introduced and go through committees and there are a series of votes before a final vote, the public had no idea because the city of Atlanta has the highest wealth gap in the country. So most of the residents in Atlanta are working, are trying to provide childcare for their children, are trying to make sure that their families are okay. They're doing the things that they have to do just to survive. So they missed those meetings. They missed when it went through public safety or when it might have gone through the committee on like housing and development. They've missed those things. And all they know is that somebody said, look, y'all, they are going to vote on this at this meeting. We have to show up and make our voices heard. They showed up. And the result
and it was still a 10-4.
Absolutely.
10-4 pass vote. Dr. Jackie.
Well, from an environmental standpoint, DeKalb County has ignored Southeast Atlanta, and Atlanta has ignored Southeast Atlanta. So this was not happenstance. This particular project, we'll call it, couldn't be sold, wouldn't even be attempted anywhere else, in Atlanta. We call it South River Watershed Alliance, it's Upper South River Watershed, where 76% of the folks in Atlanta are Black in the Upper South River Watershed. When you add in Southeast Atlanta, DeKalb County, and a little further in South DeKalb County, you're talking about 85% Black. And that is the largest congregation of Black folks still in this city that is not currently being threatened by massive gentrification. And for that reason, that's why it's happening. This is all about not having a voice. This is not having City of Atlanta and DeKalb County not caring enough about the folks who live there to even care that they have a voice. So it's been ignored. If you look at just the attack on green space, which is really the center of a healthy community, because my position is as the environment goes, so goes the community. You can see it. You can see it. Yeah. You can see it happening in Southeast Atlanta right now. Once this green space is gone and it's being replaced by concrete and destructive types of business activities, the community's gone. There's nothing left to do but move out. So it's been ignored. It's been ignored for decades. So this is just a latter-day manifestation of decades of neglect and environmental degradation. And it started actually in DeKalb with Entrenchment Creek Park. Yes. Actually, it started a little bit about that. Little earlier, but let's talk about Entrenchment Creek Park. Which was when Southfield Watershed Alliance really started to look at it and say, well, this is not going to stop. And that's when, again, out of the clear blue, in DeKalb County, we learned that that 40 acres of Entrenchment Creek Park was being swapped with Black Hall Studios. And just because he wanted, Ryan Millsap wanted to be across, there's one facility there, right. And he wanted his new facility to be right across the road from his old facility. And what's there is a public park. And you would have thought that would have been enough for DeKalb County to say, no, it's a park. But it wasn't. But for Entrenchment Creek Park was created in 2002 from money from DeKalb and money that was provided by the Blank Foundation. And so from 2002 until about 2020, DeKalb did virtually nothing to improve Entrenchment Creek Park. Nothing. And it was just primarily due to who lives there. Okay. And so they did not hesitate when, as business-oriented as it is, hesitate when a landscape architect made the pitch to DeKalb County, just say, hey, we got a deal for you. You give us the 40 acres of Entrenchment Creek Park, that's the highest section of the park, to build really another massive filming studio. Who would think of that for a community? Who would even propose that and actually think that you could get away with it? But DeKalb County just automatically acquiesced to it. It was a great idea. And that's where this all started. Okay. And so what you see across Entrenchment Creek, because if you look at the 136 acres of green space that's Entrenchment Creek Park, and the 297, they call it 300, 297 acres on the other side of Entrenchment Park, that is the largest contiguous piece of green space left in Atlanta. Okay. And no one even gave it any thought. Yeah. So, that's where this all started. Okay. With DeKalb County. City of Atlanta has never done anything to improve Southeast Atlanta. And it's, as I said, it's just environmental. It started out as environmental justice issues, which has escalated into environmental racism. But it's just all who lives there. because it couldn't, and I make this point time and time again, and no one's disagreed with me, this would not be proposed and definitely would not be happening anywhere else in Atlanta.
Okay. So can we talk about, because I think you both touched on it in your remarks, but what should it have looked like? I mean, I think we know, like, the democratic process should have been taught to the community, you know, but how should the city of Atlanta have approached this, or in your estimation?
You want to start?
I mean, I will start by saying that the city of Atlanta could have started by adhering to the zoning ordinances of DeKalb County. And even if they wanted to say, well, this is our land, this is now city of Atlanta property, how about adhering to your own zoning ordinances? Because there have been, and there are, a few agencies that should have had a voice in this that have not.
Okay.
When you talk about the city of Atlanta, you think about the neighborhood planning units that are involved in all redevelopment throughout the city of Atlanta. The neighborhood planning unit of that area heard nothing. NPUW knew nothing about what was happening, and it never came before them.
Really?
Mayor Andre Dickens just spoke about this project, I think about a month and a half ago at the last, actually it's probably about 1 month because the NPUW meeting is tonight. So about a month ago at the last NPUW meeting. And what was interesting was that when someone asked about, why couldn't you do this in a different location? What he said was, well, Heritage High School is right there. And we were like, oh, well, McNair High School is over here. Is the difference that McNair High School has more black children than Heritage High School? Because we're pretty sure that that's what it is. But also, the DeKalb County Soil and Water Conservation District, which was not even meeting regularly for a while because my husband and I tried to attend some meetings and we found out that they were not in person where they said they were. They were on Zoom, but then they didn't even convene via Zoom for 2 months straight. The DeKalb County Soil and Water Conservation District should have been monitoring that area based on the content of their meetings. Some of the things that they monitor are super low level. But when you have Entrenchment Creek, which is already severely polluted, and when you have a lot that's already going on in that area alone of the South River watershed, the DeKalb County Soil and Water Conservation District should have had some say. But according to the way things go in DeKalb County, when it comes to any type of redevelopment, when it's planning, zoning, usually the CEO cannot just make unilateral decisions without the commissioners. All of those processes, and those are very few, were circumvented. And I'm sure that Dr. Jackie can tell us about many more ways that this process has been convoluted, because even the land swap with Ryan Millsap for part of Entrenchment Creek was illegal.
Okay.
Yeah, and, from my standpoint, even if you want to proceed with police training, and I believe if you're going to have them, they need to be trained. Now, there's a whole nother conversation about what that training should look like, but let's just assume that they need training and some way to accomplish that needs to be identified. And that's fine. Right now, training is decentralized. And I made this point to the mayor, in a conversation. It's decentralized. It's working. It's not that it doesn't work. So what is wrong with pursuing that model if training is your end goal? We're talking about 2,000 EMS, fire, and police. That's not a big contingent for those three organizations. And when you start to look at 2,000 folks, and you mentioned an 85-acre site, that site, and this is something, the misinformation that the city keeps putting out there that's promoted by the mayor and anyone else, the Atlanta Police Foundation that's pushing this. It's not 85 acres. The site is 171 acres. It's an 85-acre footprint scattered over 80 it's an 85-acre footprint scattered over 171 acres. That's huge, which means
so
that
over 171 acres, there's
Right.
portions that are going to be covered.
They
that
are-
total 85 acres.
there's
Right.
the building footprint, all of the buildings, the Mock City,
Okay.
all of that stuff, parking lots are over or 85 acres of pavement. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But that 85 acres of concrete and pavement are scattered over 171 acres, which is the police training facility. You cannot, and this whole notion of having parks become part of the police training facility is
I was going to ask
insulting.
about that too.
I mean, it's insulting. Where else?
gonna go?
Because the green space that is going to
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
that 1 acre?
where is
Okay.
that model?
Okay.
Across the world, not to mention across the United States, where you see the peaceful, productive, community-friendly interaction of police and fire and EMS and the community that close. Where do you find we're going to have trails that go through 171-acre Mock City militarized police facility? I mean, the notion of even having meetings and weddings and all of these community-related activities centered on this police facility, it's insulting. And that's what's being proposed. But it's 171 acres. So there are only 125 acres of that 297-acre site that's still green space. But once again, it's right next to this 171-acre mega facility that somehow the city of Atlanta, DeKalb County thinks can become a community-friendly addition to the surrounding area.
Yeah.
I mean, and I made this point to a lot of folks that are supporting this. If you wouldn't want this in your backyard, because for a while they were saying, oh, well, the people there that want it. I don't even respond to that insult. I said, would you want it in your neighborhood? And if you wouldn't, why do you think anybody else would?
So I think that even begs the question too, which I'm sure you all have probably heard from the other side of the debate, is these activists don't care about police. They don't care about safety and all of that. So how do you combat that type of argument? Because I think we all want safe communities, right?
Sure.
And I think there is a broader conversation that we're starting to have in the state of Georgia around crime and how we deal with it and how even some smaller communities are trying to even tackle it. So what do y'all say to critics on the other side that, and I think you're bringing up a really good point, Dr. Jackie, is if you don't want this in your community, even if it is still going to be something that's built and they're going to move forward with it, have we exhausted or have we moved in a truly democratic process within it with the community? But what do y'all say to folks that have those types of questions around public safety and that whole thing?
Yeah, the first thing I ask people is, what do they think makes them safe? What makes you safe? That's the first question.
Okay.
The second question is, what do you call the police for? And when we talk about what we call the police for, many times the things that we're calling police for should really be handled by other community professionals.
Okay.
We call police for mental health crises, and we've seen that many times here in the state of Georgia. In the case of Hector Areola, police were called for a mental health crisis. Hector Areola is now dead. Case of Matthew Zadok Williams, the police were called. He was in a mental health crisis, and they knew he was. And this was DeKalb County, one of the police departments that had a certain level of training, because this is what it's all about, right? Had training in mental health procedures. Supposedly, Matthew Zadok Williams is now dead at the hands of police. So when we think about those things that we call the police for, and even if someone breaks into your home, I have spoken to a number of members of the community who have had break-ins, and a person who's very close to me was almost assaulted in her home. And when she called police, they criminalized her. They questioned her and asked, why would somebody want to break into your home, and what do you have here that people want, and all of the demoralizing questions that had nothing to do with what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
And they did not even follow up on her case. So when we think about the value of police and what they bring, that is a really big conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I myself am an abolitionist. I don't believe that police are necessary, but there are people who do. And for people who do believe that police are necessary and they believe that this is an issue of training, I say, well, what happened to the police training facility that's in existence?
Yeah.
Why was it not taken care of? When Council Member Michael Julian Bond talks about the decrepit conditions of that building, I then say you are fiscally irresponsible and you should not represent anyone. Because if you bought your child a Honda and your child ran that car into the ground, never got an oil change, never got the tires changed, never got the brakes fixed, never did anything to that car, and literally rode it until the wheels fell off, would you go and buy your child a Mercedes Benz? Would you say, oh, you broke this one, but here's a new one that costs 5 times more? Go and do whatever with that one too. This is the same analogy. But then people conveniently neglect the fact that there are Georgia Public Safety Training Institute centers all around the state of Georgia, and they are massive. And if you go to the website for the Georgia Public Safety Training Institute, they will say we are the premier training facility for public safety individuals in the entire state of Georgia. They have facilities in Forsyth. They have them even farther south. They have them up north. There are facilities, but also I like to remind people that in the city of Atlanta, within the city limits, that's not unincorporated DeKalb, where you can't disenfranchise people who can't even vote for you, there are a number of blighted facilities. There are schools that have been abandoned for years that have enough space to do some of the things that they would like to do at Cop City. I'm still trying to fathom in my mind the need for a mock city for urban warfare. I'm still trying to fathom in my mind why in the midst of a global climate crisis, you would cut down the largest urban forest in the southeastern United States, but then without trees to absorb anything, you would put a burn tower right between 2 schools. So you have an elementary school on the other side. Barack Obama Elementary School is on the other side. And then you have McNair Senior High School that is directly behind the forest. So those children who have been exposed to constant gunfire. Now, we already know the effects of lead in water on the development of children, right? And that is also an issue because those bullets in that firing range are still there. But couple that with the fact that children cannot concentrate when there's constant noise, when they are constantly anxious and afraid and wondering when they're going to hit the ground. What type of conditioning are you doing to these children? And why do these children need to be conditioned to be used to hearing gunfire? Why would that even be a thing? So I bring up all of those things to people who talk about training and police and safety, and I remind them that right now in the city of Atlanta, crime is down.
Okay.
And I usually say it's probably because most of the cops are over at Cop City. Less cops, less crime. But I try to frame it so that people understand that the root causes of crime come from a lack of resources being met. When people don't have their basic needs met, but they have families to provide for, they will steal. They might kill if you're standing in the way of what they perceive is going to help their family. They might commit grand larceny because they need a ride to work or a way to get things for their families. But if we put that money into educational resources, wraparound services, and community, which is job training, right? Employment opportunities. If people have a way to provide for their families, how much are they going to be looking to commit crimes?
There's a part of kind of at the height where I think we probably all can agree, and where we started to see more around Cop City where the forest offender was killed in January. Can y'all talk a little bit about how that has pivoted the conversation in the respective militarization, peaceful protest?
Immediately when the city of Atlanta, and let's not leave out the state of Georgia because they are a huge player in all of this. When they saw that it just, dismissal of any objections that were being raised to this, it was just not going to be tolerated. Their approach to that was just to control the narrative. And that's for a very long time, that's what this was about. When folks got wind of it across the country and started to make their way to Atlanta, the whole issue got to be outsiders and folks who didn't live here, as if the folks who lived here really wanted this. It was kind of still, the whole narrative has just been so ridiculous. But when you control the media, then you can control the narrative that gets out there. Because I listen to, the conversation, and it's like, politicians, the mayor, they're living on a different planet. I mean, are we experiencing the same kind of involvement and reaction to what's going on here? They seem oblivious. And that's just been because when, there was no way to get the true narrative out there, and that's changing. And so the goal initially was to paint any opposition as the problem. And then they could dictate how they wanted to deal with the problem. And so that's why we ended up with these constant confrontations. They seemed almost staged between the police, and the forest defenders or the tree sitters or whomever we're talking about who actually took up residence there, so as to continue to support and justify this narrative of retaliation. And the only folks who are against this are folks from outside of the city. And so, and that was the goal. And that's why we ended up with really where we are. The idea was that if they could villainize folks who were coming from out of town, and even those who were in the city, although they figured out very quickly, it's kind of, that was a difficult argument to make, that folks who live here are domestic terrorists just because they're peacefully protesting this issue. But that was the goal, to control the narrative. And it got out of hand. And I knew that it eventually would. I was devastated the morning that I heard that Tortuguilla was killed, because what was going on had all of the indications that it was inevitable, what was going on. And the issue hasn't gone away, and it hasn't, because, and it won't, because
like it moved it from a place of communities being upset and feeling disrespected and a disruption of the democratic process, to now it becoming a more violent and dangerous space.
I believe that when Manny was murdered, for me, because I also work in my organizing with the families of children who have been murdered by police, this brought it around full circle to people.
Yeah.
to show people what the militarization of police does to a community. Because if you think about the murder of Jamarian Robinson, August 5th, 2016, a task force very similar to the same one that murdered Manny earlier this year converged upon a location where Jamarian Robinson was. Jamarian Robinson was at the top of a staircase with his hands up, just like Manny. And Jamarian Robinson was riddled with 76 bullet holes. Those are 76 bullet holes through his body, through his person, not including from the flashbang grenade that was thrown. But Jamarian Robinson stood at the top of a staircase unarmed with his hands up. A weapon was later found in a bedroom in the location where he was murdered. And boom, there was the narrative. He shot at police. It was a shootout. But the only people who ever shot were police officers. Fortunately, in the case of Jamarian Robinson, the weapon that was found in a roommate's bedroom was found to have been inoperable. So there was no way that he could have shot.
Wow.
But this took years to prove. In Manny's case, immediately the narrative was spun that Manny fired a shot at a police officer, injuring the police officer, and therefore was murdered by police in response. Well, there was a video that came out from body cam
Yeah.
from the Atlanta Police Department, because Georgia State Troopers, Georgia Department of Public Safety officers, they are not required to wear body cams. Only our local municipal police are required to wear body cams and have them engaged at all times when interacting with members of the public. So from the body cam of an Atlanta Police Department officer, we saw a snippet and heard that when the shot was fired that supposedly injured the unknown police officer, where the injuries are still unknown, we heard someone say something to the effect of, "I think he shot his own man,"
Yeah.
indicating that this officer was wounded from friendly fire. So the family of Tortuguita ordered an independent autopsy because no one would communicate with them about what happened to Manny and how it happened. They got no answers. When that independent autopsy was done, the first thing we heard was the decedent was sitting on the ground, most likely cross-legged, but it was determined that at the time of death, the decedent was sitting with their hands raised in a meditative position. And then when we get an official autopsy from the DeKalb County coroner, we find the same thing, but we also find that there was no evidence of gunshot residue on the hands of the decedent. And then we learn that the decedent was actually shot at least 57 times. So this is a person who was supposedly a violent protester who was simply sitting. And mind you, the forest defenders who have come here are doing what has been done in this country for ages by climate justice activists. How many times have we seen people chained to a tree to keep it from getting cut down? How many times have people lined up against a pipeline in defense of that land physically with their bodies, linking arms to form a human chain? Our forest defenders decided that if they lived in the trees and amongst the trees, bulldozers wouldn't move them. So if I'm here, they're not going to cut this tree down. But what happened with that task force is what has happened in the Black community time and again. And we've seen it, not only in Georgia, but across this nation, where they storm in, they come in like gangbusters with whatever their reasoning for going in, but they come in riot gear, the surplus that they've gotten from the military, the night scopes, the Kevlars, the SWAT tanks that they get, the ARs, everything that they have, all the riot gear, the majority of it is coming from surplus from the military. And this is what the further militarization of police will do to our communities. And we've already begun to see the evidence of that.
Yeah. Yeah. in talking about the death of Manny and him dying at the being shot by a Georgia State Patrol. Obviously, there's state interference that is happening here now. How has that changed this overall debate that the state is now, intervened? There's some oversight. I know DA Sherry Boston has decided that she wouldn't convict certain things in DeKalb County, but and that the response that she's gotten from our state's attorney general has been, I think, what we've seen with other progressive district attorneys. But what are some of y'all's thoughts around the state interference and how they're weighing in on this issue?
Well, it's obvious there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
Right.
And there's just no way to get around it. I have, talked with the mayor, and I'm saying, almost during the conversation, have you read anything else? Have you?
How do your conversations with the mayor go? Because that was really going to be one of my next questions.
Yeah.
Is like, for you specifically, but also for folks that are part of community movement builders, how have those conversations with, have y'all met with the mayor and with city council?
Oh, he won't talk to us.
Yeah.
He won't talk to us, no. But I do know that I have friends who are organizers with other organizations, like the People's Uprising, for example.
Okay.
I do know that members from their organizations have tried to have conversations with the mayor and whoever else he's brought in regarding Cop City specifically. But I also know that those same individuals did not leave with a sense of settling in their spirits that the mayor truly cares about the needs of the community, or that he or the Atlanta Police Foundation have any real intention of making a real community space, and that they pretty much see organizers and people who express dissent as people just to be managed and handled and kept at bay so that their narrative does not overshadow the narrative that the mayor and the governor and the attorney general's office want to put out. So really, it was a way of the mayor trying to appease these very progressive community organizations, and they were not satisfied by what they heard because they could see the ploy from the time they began to meet.
What about you, Dr. Jackie?
And unfortunately, I walked away, with the same feeling, because I live in Underwood Hills, Northwest Atlanta, and the mayor used to live there. We worked together on community issues, and I was really disappointed at how little serious contemplation had taken place about doing something different. I didn't walk away at all with the notion that anything I said mattered, or actually made a difference, because when you actually fact check this whole issue, a reasonable person couldn't walk away and say, well, this is something that should be done. The facts just don't line up with the reality of what this is about, what is planned and what has taken place. Now, if you read any account, and I encourage folks, William Bunch with the Philadelphia Inquirer was in town about a week ago. He has done an eloquent job.
Yes.
That is really amazing.
Yeah, he did an amazing piece, and I have texted him. I took him out. He did an amazing job, just putting into perspective a litany of issues.
Yeah. He went to a number of different places.
Yes.
And wrote it a lot. It was very he illustrated a lot of things. It was very story form, but it was also
Right.
very informative. Yeah.
And and so, but me, I'm a reasonable person. I need to try to understand what is going on here. And when you look at the Atlanta Police Foundation and their interest in this, and it's monetary.
Okay.
It would having the ability now, whether or not they can actually make this happen in reality, making this a moneymaker for them, putting them on sound financial footing, being able to follow through on some of the promises that they have made in terms of what this facility can do, that they can make that happen by bringing in police, training police from all over the world, not just this country, but, all over the world. So it's a moneymaker for them. If you add in the issue of, let's just be quite honestly, Buckhead City, or what was supposed to be Buckhead City that didn't happen. What were the politics behind that? What were the promises made around that particular issue? And what impact is that having on the building of this police training facility? I think all of these issues play into that. And it does come down to heightening the police presence, the ability of police to manage urban cities in a different way, because nothing else makes sense. Like I said, I had a sensible conversation with a lot of sensible people.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to some APD officers. We were in line waiting for a salad. And I took that as an opportunity to ask them their opinion on how the whole debate around Cop City, how do they feel about it? And so, of course, I think their perspective was, we do need new facilities. We do.
Yeah,
we are training in Forsyth, and we're doing high-speed chase trainings here, and we're kind of all over the place. And they said that their facilities were not up to code and all of those types of things. But he did say that it started off as an issue around saving the forest, and he said, and then it moved into an issue around police. And
I don't think the two have ever been different. And what people don't realize is that the strength of this movement really comes in the intersectionality of it. And the conversation about police is one that does need to be had.
Yeah,
because
and police reform, right? Yeah.
When we talk about the families even that I work with, if you call the names, Jimmy Atchison, Shali Tilson, Jabril Robinson, Jamarian Robinson, Hector Areola, Matthew Zadok Williams, DeAndre Phillips, when you are calling the names of these people who have been murdered by police, there is something fundamentally broken in how police are trained. And I believe it goes back to the culture. That's why I'm always asking people, is it really training or is it the culture? And then still, what do you do with that? Because why are you training for a high-speed chase? What's the need of a high-speed chase? Why is this even an issue? If there's a traffic infraction, you have cameras all over the city. We are the most surveilled city in the United States, thanks to the APF and Motorola. Send a red light ticket. You do it all the time. Why are you chasing people? Because you hope that they're black and you stop them and that there's something else in there so you can put them in jail and continue to make money off of black bodies. Goes all the way back to the prison farm, goes all the way back to the colonial times, goes all the way back to the fact that black bodies are being harmed and enslaved and used for what we can produce to make money. But even if we don't go that far, think about what the APF really is. That is a police foundation that does not advocate for police. It is made up of major corporations. And you remember when we were out there against SB 202. Remember those same corporations? They are the same ones who are members of the Atlanta Police Foundation. So if I'll suppress your vote, I will snuff out your life.
Does anybody that's part of city council, do they hold a seat on the board on APF?
They do not presently.
Okay.
But they did just pass a resolution at the June 5th meeting where they decided to approve further funding so that Cop City could be constructed. There was a resolution that was passed that would take a member of council and make that person a part of, I don't know if it would be the board or if it would be like another ad hoc committee, but there would now be some accountability from the APF, because the one thing that the majority of council members did agree on, whether they voted for or against the further funding, is that there does need to be more accountability, because there were just too many times that people would ask these council member questions that they had no answers for because the APF was not doing the reporting that they were supposed to do, and council members knew nothing, which still baffles me as to why they could blindly go along at the mayor's behest to disenfranchise an entire community of people and the city of Atlanta at large without having all of the proper information. And when they are given information that has been vetted and found to be fact that they know adversely affects the community, how could they continue to move forward with something like that?
Yeah. And the other point is the conversation you had with the policeman. The needs of the police do not outweigh the needs of the community or the rights of the community. And unfortunately, that's kind of it's one of the narratives that's out there. You know, where do you get that notion that it's okay to destroy the community for thousands and thousands of Black people so that you can have this state-of-the-art police facility without even considering that maybe we don't have to have all, if we're going to train them, and we've said, I believe that they do, at least I believe that they do, that it doesn't have to be 171 acres. Right. It doesn't even need to be 85 acres. I mean, this can be done in different places. So what if you have to drive to a particular facility to get training? You're getting paid. That's part of the job. So this argument that, it's got to be here, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this extravagant, because I don't want to be inconvenienced, but you're okay with inconveniencing an entire communities of Black people? Right. It's so self-serving as to, wondering, well, maybe this is not the police person we need. Right. And if, because I don't, in terms of hiring people, I don't remember anyone saying, when you apply for a job and you have to go for training, it's in California. That's really a long way away. Right. So I don't think I want this job because I don't want to travel that far to get trained. Yeah. I mean, that's the mentality of what's going on.
That is the mentality from those gentlemen that were in line with me, but I do think that there is a real conversation, and you two ladies have expressed these sentiments beautifully in this conversation around a holistic conversation with the community, and what does that look like, and making sure that the community is tapped when we're making such a big decision for our city. I think I want to pivot to the last part, and before we wrap, that so it's being built. I know that they've started some demolition already, right, in the area. There is an effort from that community movement leaders is leading amongst other groups that are part of the Stop Cop City campaign to get it on the ballot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about that and what that looks like and how folks can get involved if they want to.
Definitely. So this petition was born out of the fact that we were ignored by the city council, and particularly the fact that Mayor Dickens lied about the true cost of Cop City to council members and the community. And the resolution, actually it was an ordinance that was passed on June 5th, allowed for additional funding other than what was placed in the original ordinance for Cop City. So the cost of Cop City for taxpayers has now more than doubled.
Okay, so what's the price
So
tag
the
now?
price tag now for taxpayers is more than 67 million.
And it started off at like 30?
30 million. But again, just thinking about fiscal responsibility, there is no way that it should be okay for someone to tell you that taxpayers will only have to pay one price, but then it more than doubles for taxpayers. My granny is one of those people who has to pay double property taxes because she lives in the city of Atlanta, but it is unincorporated DeKalb.
Yeah.
So I don't want my granny paying that. I don't want anybody in her neighborhood paying that. I don't want anyone in the city of Atlanta paying that. So those of us who are a part of the entire movement to stop Cop City and defend the Atlanta forest, we are all forest defenders. We decided that we need a way for the community to truly have a voice because they keep ignoring our voices. So what we said was, we know that there is a way that we can get a ballot initiative on the ballot in November. All the amazing lawyers who are a part of the movement came together, found the part of the Georgia Constitution that does allow for a ballot referendum, and that began with where we are right now, submitting a petition to the municipal clerk to have a referendum on the ballot in November where people will be able to vote as to whether the city of Atlanta should or should not build Cop City. And we believe that this is an opportunity for the city of Atlanta. It has never been done before in the city of Atlanta.
I'm just going to say this is kind of unprecedented.
Never.
Right? Yeah.
So this is the first time that residents of the city of Atlanta will be able to engage in direct democracy. If you go to copcityvote.com, this is the most direct form of democracy because you're getting to choose that this is a question that you want to be on November's ballot. Copcityvote.com will tell you about what this petition is for, what the referendum says, and it is simply, shall the city of Atlanta repeal that original ordinance that granted permission to build Cop City? We want people to say yes to their communities, yes to better housing, more affordable housing, yes to resources that would help people who have mental health issues get the treatment they need. Yes to policing alternatives and diversion. Yes to education. Yes to employment opportunities. Yes, the city of Atlanta needs to repeal that ordinance because the people never got a say. So you can sign a referendum petition almost anywhere in the city of Atlanta. We have 2 offices that are headquartered, one on the east side that the police continue to circle, by the way. Park Avenue Baptist Church is being constantly surveilled by the Atlanta police. And on the west side, the American Friends Service Committee is a hub for trainings for those people who would be canvassers. You do need to be a City of Atlanta resident to be a canvasser. In order to sign this petition to get the referendum on November's ballot, you need to have been registered to vote in the City of Atlanta during the last municipal election in 2021. People will explain that to you while they are out. If you want to know where you can go to sign a petition, where can people meet me, how can they show up, go to copcityvote.com. But we are pushing this referendum petition like our lives depend on it because they truly do. We know that if we allow the people of the city of Atlanta to vote, then we will know for sure whether the city of Atlanta truly wants Cop City or whether they don't.
Right. How many signatures do y'all need?
We need 70,000 signatures.
Okay.
We are making a push, of course, to get double that because we anticipate the municipal clerk
Well, you're not a real organizer
engaging
if you don't
in
get-
exactly more
you don't get
shenanigans
more.
because we know that organizing math
That's
is
right.
different,
That's
right?
right.
The organizing math tells us that somebody might have just moved and changed their voter registration, but I was living in Lithonia in
That's it.
2021,
Yep.
So we know that those things happen. Even the most experienced voters can make simple mistakes like that, and we won't charge it to their hearts. We know that it's simply the way their thoughts are
confusing,
moving.
yeah.
It is, and I believe that it is deliberately confusing. Of course, that is a whole other conversation. But we know that we need to try and get double those 70,000 signatures, and we are making the biggest push ever. People are going to see us out in the city. If you see us out, come and talk to us.
If you are, to the people.
if you see us out in these streets, please come and talk to us. Even if you are not a person who believes that there should be any opposition to Cop City. I do believe that you're a person who believes in direct democracy. And if you do believe in direct democracy, then it's time for us to let the people decide. Go to copcityvote.com, find us out in the streets, sign that petition so that there can be a referendum on this ballot and the people of Atlanta will finally have their voices heard.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Last question. Have y'all presented any solutions, suggestions, or anything, proposals to the mayor, to city council? What do those look like?
Oh, yes.
It's, for me, it's simple.
Yeah.
Decentralize it.
When you say decentralized, tell us what that means.
It's number one, decide what you need.
Okay.
Because 2,000 folk, and that's a number out of City Hall. That's not my number. 2,000 folk just don't justify 171-acre facility and all this, and $67 million, which is really a blank check because it will end up being more than $67 million. That's just it. Decentralize it. It's okay to travel. I wasn't my statement about that was real. Right. You may have to travel. That's okay. What the bottom line is, you don't totally destroy communities while under this notion that it can't be done anywhere else. Certainly it can. So that's for me, and I made that clear to City Hall and Mayor. Just decentralize it. Now, they don't want to do that because obviously we talked about narratives. That's not what they want. But that is the solution to this issue. Do you really need a 4-story burn tower?
You really don't.
What about the other police departments across this state? Do they need one? So, there's some critical questions about need here, not just what you want for all other reasons, but what do you need in order to train Atlanta's police to be effective? And that conversation, hasn't been had, but it's necessary to determine what's needed and how we can get it done. And it can be done differently, and it can be done successfully and not destroy entire communities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as stated before, the city of Atlanta has many, many blighted properties that are expansive, that can be used, especially if they decentralize, as Dr. Jackie said. Let the police have this space, let the firefighters have this space, let the EMTs and paramedics have this space. You have more than enough land to do that. What is really amazing to me is that the size of the City of Atlanta Police Department is only a fraction of that of the Los Angeles Police Department and the New York Police Department. However, the City of Atlanta has the largest police foundation and is seeking to build the largest militarized training facility in these United States. So I'm really wondering what's really behind that, right? We keep saying there's got to be more to this. There's a whole lot more to this, and there is. But if we're simply talking about location, the Braves moved to Truist Park. You don't want to go up there? We don't want to go down the Atlanta Motor Speedway. We don't want to go to Buckhead because they want it. So why wouldn't you put it where people want it, right? I think that everything that we've said keeps bringing us back around to why this location? Why is it set in stone? What does that really mean for us? But there were people who actually did put together a plan and propose some other locations. They submitted it to various council members and to the mayor. I mean, everybody in City Hall got it. We got no response. These are some people who are much more level-headed than I am. These are people who, I'm telling you, they are much more educated than I am. They can imagine things the way that I cannot. And what they put together was really impressive, to tell you the truth. And you could see that there was a lot of thought that went into it.
And at least trying to get to some level of consensus.
They were saying, look, nobody's saying that police don't need training.
Yeah.
No one is saying don't build a facility. I mean, of course, you could always rehab the one you got because you really could have been taking care of that. But okay, You don't want to do
But are
that.
they leasing that out of Atlanta Metro?
That's for fire.
Oh, for fire.
Right?
Okay.
But then the police facility that Councilmember Michael Julian Bond talks so much about being dilapidated and all of these things, I'm just wondering who was in charge of keeping that together. Do they still have a job? How much are they getting paid? No, I'm serious, because when we're talking about money right here, right? We're talking about money. Like, people are getting paid for this stuff. But you have families in the city of Atlanta who can't afford groceries, and they are just above that poverty line, so they can't get any public assistance. So they are literally living paycheck to paycheck. They live their lives in limbo. But we are willing to make taxpayers foot the bill for $67 million for something that is monstrous in size, that is not necessary for the goal that we're trying to achieve, and adds further harm to communities. But all the things that have been submitted were really ignored. And I think that was when people really, really started to say, they just don't care about us.
Yeah.
They're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Folks just had enough.
Yeah.
We've come to the end of our time together. I have so enjoyed this conversation. I think you all covered so many different layers. Hopefully it was informative to the folks that are listening and watching. And we really do encourage you, if you are interested in being a part of the movement. The website is
copcityvote.com.
copcityvote.com, to figure out where you can sign the petition. I'm sure community movement builders and the other organizations that are part of the effort are looking for volunteers. You have to be an Atlanta City resident if you are going to participate, and also have to be an Atlanta City resident that voted in the 2021 election to sign the petition if you're interested. Thank y'all. Thank you for your work.
Ashley.
Yeah. Thank you for your work.
you.
Thank y'all for what you're doing, and just advocating on behalf of everyone who doesn't have the time, the energy, the space, the wherewithal, whatever. I mean, doing the hard work on behalf of everyone is not easy. And so I really am just blessed to see two Black women that are leading the charge and making sure that this is happening. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for everyone who's tuning in, thank y'all for joining Georgia Smothered and Covered. This is going to be just one part of, hopefully we'll be able to get some elected officials in here who can share some of their insights on the issue around the police training facility, Cop City. So we can hear all sides of this conversation. But thank y'all for tuning in. We hope that this has been helpful for you, and stay tuned for next time. I'm Ashley. Peace out, y'all.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
I love it. That is Georgia Smothered and Covered.